Hub. Welcome to Netlabs Hub, where I'm going to teach you CCNA 1, Topic 2 or Day 2, Configuration of Network Operating System. This is the lab that I'm going to go through. As you can see, this is the slide that I'm going to use. So, Day 2, I'm going to talk about how to configure a network operating system. Networking operating system. Network devices always have their own kind of operating system, not based on Windows or Linux, but they have a special operating system called iOS in the networking operating system. With the iOS, you can carry out multiple network configuration easily. Cisco came up with this kind of operating system to ensure that their devices works well. So this is the roadmap. I'm going to explain features and function of the iOS, explain the purpose of the Cisco IOS, explain how to access Cisco IOS, explain also how to navigate multiple Cisco IOS modes, describe the command structure, and in this slide I'm also going to do the basic labs that are there. iOS, this is the structure of the operating system. We've got the hardware at the center here, as you can see, then shielded by the kernel. So the kernel controls the hardware, then outside the kernel there is a shell. So as you can see, all electronic devices require an operating system, that is Windows, Mac and Linux. These are types of operating system to function. So Cisco IOS is for networking devices, and those networking devices are the switches, routers and wireless access point, also firewall. So what is a shell? The operating system shell is either command line interface, that is CLI, or graphical user interface, and enables a user to interface with the application. So the shell can exist in terms of command called CLI, that is command line, or graphical user interface, where people use mouse to click. Also, we've got the kernel. So the kernel is the engine of the operating system. The kernel communicates directly with the hardware and manages how the hardware resources are used. When they say hardware resources, they mean the likes of processor, the memory, etc. So the hardware, these are tangible computer parts or underlying electronics. So the purpose of operating system: one, using a graphical user interface, it enables a user with a mouse to make selections and run program. For example, what I'm doing here, this is the enablement of the operating system here. I can enter text, I can scroll. That is the role of operating system through graphical user interface, and that is achieved through the shell. Also, using CLI, the user can be able to enter commands using the keyboard. So using command line interface on Cisco IOS switch or router enables a technician to use the keyboard to run the commands. That is in summary. There are distinct variation of Cisco IOS. There is iOS for switches, routers and other Cisco networking devices. And this iOS exists in versions. Just as we've got in Windows, we've got Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 11. Those are the versions. So when it comes to iOS, also versions do exist. So this is part of the roles of the purpose of the operating system. So access method. These are methods that are used to access the Networking Operating System. And this method, as Cisco is concerned, there are three distinct methods. We can use the console port or the console cable. This is only applicable for newly devices from the factory. There is nothing configured on that, so we use the console to access them. I'm going to show you how to do that in Cisco Packet Tracer shortly. Also, for doing initial configuration, primarily we use the console port, or the console cable. Then we've got Secure Shell. Secure Shell is a secure protocol manned under encryption algorithm used for remotely and securely establishing CLI sessions over network. This protocol is very powerful as system administration is concerned, whereby it is used to access remote devices for authentication. It also eases the art of troubleshooting. So we've got SSH, that is Secure Shell, and Telnet. Telnet is also a way of accessing the access method to iOS. You can use Telnet also for establishing remote session through the virtual interface over the network. Though Telnet is not commonly used because it is insecure, it is unencrypted. Commands just move through plain text, which stands a chance for threat attacks to hamper your network. So mostly Secure Shell is the preferred. These are the methods used to access the iOS or the devices. The aux port, we've got this aux port, is an older method of establishing CLI session remotely via telephone dial-up, though it's not in modern way used. So this is terminal emulation. Terminal emulation, for example, it can be PuTTY, this one. Let's compare here. You can see these are the sessions. Then you enter the remote IP here in this section. Then you select the port. 22 means you are going to use Secure Shell. So that is it. So once you secure, and then it will show you this is Secure Shell version 2. So terminal emulation, regardless of the access method, a terminal emulation program will be required. So you can use PuTTY. We've got Xterm. We've got SolarWind. There is a lot of such program. We've got Teraterm, PuTTY, SolarWind, Xterm. All of those are terminal emulation. So next, Cisco IOS modes of operation. So let me just show you. For example, when I take a router, assume this router is newly from the factory. Then you take your laptop here, the admin laptop. For you to access it, you take the console here. You connect to the console port, then you connect to that. Once you do that, you come to the desktop here, then terminal emulation. So this is simulation, but in real environment, you will install a program called PuTTY or Teraterm to be able to access that. So once you do this, just a minute. So connect it here, then terminal emulation. You see, I have accessed the router on the laptop. So this is the example that I'm going to use alongside this. So the next section, Cisco IOS modes. Let me talk about the modes practically so that at least you can know. So this is the router. Let me go back. When it ends with a greater symbol, this symbol, it means this is the user mode. There is less that you can do in this mode. So for you, we've got three types of modes which are main. We've got user mode, user executive mode. Second, we've got privilege mode. The third, we've got global configuration mode. Under global configuration mode, we've got other sub modes. I'll show you. So to move from user mode to privilege mode, you type enable command. It moves us to, the moment I type enable, the sign changes to a hash. Hash means I'm in privilege mode. If you want to know commands that are configured in user mode, in the privilege mode, sorry, you just put a space bar, then question mark, then these are the commands that are configured in the privilege mode. You can configure the clock. You see, these are the things you can do at this mode. This is where saving configuration is done. You can log out, you can telnet, you can SSH. So that is, let me set clock, for example, clock set. Right now it's 21, then 35. So you set the hours, minutes, second, then the date. The date today is 26, then March, then 2026. That's how you set the clock. For you to verify, just say show clock, then you can see the clock. So I have configured all this in the privilege mode. So to move from privilege mode to global configuration mode, now where the entire network is set up, you use configure terminal for beginners. But if you've mastered this, you can just say conft, then still it will work. Conft, you see? So things have changed here. It was a hash. Right now config is in the bracket. So this mode is global configuration mode. So we've got types of different sub modes under global configuration mode. When you do this, for example, interface gig 0/0. So just a minute. First Ethernet 0/0. Which interface is here? Just a minute. Gigabit 0/0/0. So config interface gig 0/0/0. You can see config -if. It means interface. This is a sub mode under global configuration mode. So those are the modes, as you can see here. So I have already demonstrated what you can do at user mode, how it looks like, you see. And in a switch and a router, both user mode looks the same, privilege mode looks the same, then configuration mode looks a bit same. But what you find in the global configuration mode on a normal 2960 Catalyst Cisco switch is totally different, or somehow different from what you'll find on the Cisco router. So this is it. You can see all that I have explained in Cisco Packet Tracer is what it is in this slide. Configuring commands. The primary configuration mode is the global configuration mode, or simply global config. Use the configure terminal command to access it, you see. So under this global configuration mode, we've got different specific sub configuration. We've got the interface mode. I have shown you the line mode, for example, when you are configuring these three types of line access. Then this is how to navigate to move from one mode to the other. For example, if you are in the config mode, global configuration mode, and you want to move back to privilege mode, user privilege mode, you'll type exit. If you are in any other mode, either sub global configuration mode, and you want to be back to privilege mode, you use the word end. Can be used to exit out of global configuration mode regardless of which configuration mode you are. You see? So these are the basic commands that you have to master as CCNA 1, Introduction to Computer Networks, under topic 2 or day 2, Configure Network Operating System is concerned. So how to navigate? To navigate, let me show you. For example, here I am in global configuration mode, sub interface mode. So to move back to where I was, you use exit. You see, I'm there. When I use end, I'll be back to privilege mode. When I type exit, I'll be back to user mode. This is user executive mode. When I type exit again, you see, I cannot exit far beyond this. This is the last. So when you want to see what can be configured, there just a space bar and then question mark, and then you will see. So that is it. I have explained most of it here. Basic iOS command structure. So they have demonstrated using a switch here with the show IP protocols. So we've got switch here. This is the prompt. Then show is a command. Then IP protocol, that is a keyword. Then this is a space here, as you can see. Then ping is a command. Then this one, there is a space here. Then this is a keyword. So generally, the basic iOS command structure is composed of the command, the prompt, the space, and the keyword. Let me show you. For example, when I say config terminal, or I can go back and then show IP protocols. So this is a prompt. I'm in privilege mode. This is a command. This show is a command. Then there is a space here. It's part of the component of basic iOS command structure. Then this is a keyword. IP protocols is a keyword. So that's what they mean by here. So this is it. iOS command syntax. What is the syntax? So for you to perfect in Cisco Packet Tracer, you should master the syntax. There is nothing good like mastering the syntax. All these commands will be at fingertips and you will end up doing crazy laps in Cisco Packet Tracer. So we've got the boldface. The boldface text indicates the command and keywords that you enter. Italic text indicates the argument, you can see. So for example here, like description is the command. Then the italicized text here, this is the argument for that command. So we've got iOS help features. So these are just features that enhance flow in Cisco Packet Tracer as those devices are concerned. So we've got what we call context sensitive. It helps to provide a list of commands and arguments associated with it within the context of the current mode. So each mode, it has, for example, I have been using the question mark. This is one of the context feature. So we've got that hotkeys and shortcut. Shortcuts are good to master. For example, when I type here, then Control Z, you see, it returns Control Z. It's like you are using enter to return to the privilege mode. So those are part of the shortcuts that are used. If you type conf, it's the same as configure T. And in Cisco Packet Tracer, especially iOS, when you type in capital letters and small letters, there is no big difference. It will just be effected as intended. So these are the hotkeys and shortcuts. So drop down arrow, it allows the user to scroll through the command history. It shows you the previously typed command. Up arrow, down arrow, the next, and then up arrow, the previous. Tap, it is used to autocomplete. For example, always for you to master, you always use tap to autocomplete these particular commands. Control A moves the beginning of the line, moves back to the beginning of the line. Control E moves to the end of the line. Control R displays a line. Let me show you Control R. Control R. I haven't typed anything yet. So Control Z exits the configuration mode and returns to this. Control C exits the aborts the current command. So generally these are the shortcuts that are basically used. You can at least get this video, watch, practice vis-a-vis alongside the Cisco Packet Tracer to master it. So here, navigating the iOS, I had already shown you this using a Cisco router here, as you can see. I just took the ISR, integrated service router 4300 series. Then using the console cable here, I connected to my laptop. You see, then I accessed the operating system or the router here. Because this router, it has no port, it is difficult for you to access it for the first time. So that is it. There is something that I told you that iOS exists in versions, so you can use the command show versions to show you the versions of the version of that router. You can see these are the packages. These are the packages that support different functionalities. So you can see the version is 15.5. You can see this is the version. So that's what you have to know. I'm not going to do this because I had already done it. Establishing a console session with the Teraterm. So you install Teraterm on this computer, then you open Teraterm, then while connecting your console cable in your console port here, then to the RS232 on the switch, then you access. So this is the initial establishing a console session with the Teraterm. You can use Teraterm, you can use PuTTY, you can use Xterm. So basic device configuration. So basic device configuration, for example, when devices come from the industry or they are newly, there is nothing configured on that device. They have no passwords. There is nothing to do. There may be message displayed while accessing it. The lines are just totally empty. There is no IP addresses. So I'm going to show you what do they mean by basic device configuration. So first of all, a device on a network is always crucial with it. It should have the hostname. Hostname appear in CLI, and hostname is one of the functionality that is used to help in troubleshooting, because it is difficult for you to troubleshoot a device that has no hostname in a network. So hostname is very key, and there is a way you you give a hostname. You give a hostname 1 depending on the type of the product, 2 depending on the location, 3 depending on the service, 4 depending on the maybe department, still the location that exists. That is it. So, and in Cisco iOS there is no using of spaces when it comes to giving hostname. You better use the hyphens or underscores. So hostname is a command, then you give the argument or the the argument or the keyword here. So once the naming convention has been identified, the next step is to apply the names. So let me show you here. You move from user mode to configure terminal, that's global configuration mode, then you give the host name. This host name indicates to us that this is switch flow number 1. So when there is a problem with the network in switch flow in flow number 1, you can just go to that switch that exists in that flow, because you can see this name. So let me show you. Config terminal, then host name, then router flow _1. So that is the host name. The moment I type that, then this name changes. You see, my prompt changes. So that's how to set a host name. Limiting device access. Secure network devices to physically limit access. So you must have set up the username or set up the password, and there is a way to do that. So you can set a password that when a person using the console, he has to enter the username and the password. When the one is trying to access the device remotely on the network, he should also have the credentials or the password to be authenticated alongside. So that is it. Configuration of password. And remember, your password should be encrypted. So for you to secure the user mode, always use enable secret password. Secret means your password here, the name of the password that you've given here, it's going to be hashed or encrypted. So if you choose not to use this, at the end of the configuration, you must use service password encryption. It will ensure all the passwords in that particular device, they are encrypted. So let me show you this. Securing a console. It is easy. Remember, I accessed it the first time without asking the password. So line console 0. Then you give the password. Let me give it Cisco. Then login. Without the word login, it cannot be, you cannot be requested for a password. So that is how we configure the secure console. When we end, then exit totally. You see, I'm requested for the password. So the password here, it was Cisco. So you have to type Cisco, though it will not be visible before you access the user mode. So that's how you secure the console here. The next is how to secure remote SSH. SSH works through virtual terminals, and on a switch that it exists within the 16 terminals, that is 0 to 15. So you do the same just here, but what is different is the type of the line here. So you just enable config terminal line VTY 0 to 15, then password Cisco login. So it is that way. So I have secured how many 16 lines that can be used by different people to access the device. So that is what they mean. Basic device configuration. You set the host name, you configure the lines, you set the passwords. So this is it. Secure privilege mode. Enable secret class. So class is the password. For you to reach here, you have to enter this password. After here, if you had configured the console, then you have to enter another password. See, that is it. This is what I have just done in the router. Encrypting password. So I told you that if you choose not to use secret, then you have to, at the end, you have to use service password encryption. This command is typed in the global configuration mode, and it is used to encrypt all the passwords. The next thing is the banner. You have to configure your device in a way that when a person tries to log in, he should be warned. You cannot configure a positive banner that welcome to my device. That is not logical as network engineering is concerned. You have to configure a banner that warns an intruder. So for example, let me show you how to configure a banner here. So banner, MOTD, message of the day, then you start with the delimiter, and the delimiter that you started with it, you should end with it. So if you started with this symbol, you should type something in the middle and end with it. If you started with a hash, you should end with it. If you started with this, you should end with that. If you started with that, you should end with that. For example, unauthorized access is prohibited. Then, so this is my banner. I have, you see, unauthorized access is prohibited. That's how to configure the banner. So you can check now the syntax. If you type a wrong command, it will not be executed. How to save configuration. This is how to save configuration. So Cisco enable. Then you can write memory. That's one. You see it is building, or copy running startup. I'm copying this configuration that I'm doing as saving itself in the running configuration file. So when I say copy running configuration file to startup configuration file, I mean take my current configuration or candidate configuration to my NVRAM, non-volatile RAM, irrespective the device, the power goes off, or there is a restart on this device, the configs are not lost. So that is the another way. Or you can just say copy run start. So it will also save. So those are the techniques that are used to save. If you want to erase the device, factory reset, I can just do the same also. You come to privilege mode, then you type erase startup config, because you had transferred the running config to startup config. After that, and then you see system block initialize. So you reload, you restart. After restarting, all my configuration will be lost. This is what they mean here. Capture configuration to a text file. So you can save your configuration to a text file like a notepad, then you just paste in a device. So that is a common way in a real network environment to save on time. So these are the commands. After pasting, you can show running config, show startup config after saving. So majority of this is used, for example, you can back up a device and then you restore, maybe to fix some hitches in a network, then you just paste the script and then it works. So configuring initial switch setting. You see, verify the default switch configuration, configure basic switch. They mean you should configure the clock, you configure the password, enable password, the banner, the host name, the lines, that is the console, the VTY, that's virtual terminal. Those are the basic configuration you have to carry here, and I have shown you in the using the router here. So address schemes. So remember, for a device to communicate with another on a network, or for you to access a certain resource on a network, you should have what we call the IP address. So on that IP address, there is a scheme it follows. There are two types of IP addresses or IP address formats. We've got the IP version 6 and the IP version 4. the way IP version 4 is represented is totally far different from the way IP version 6 is represented. IP version 4 uses the decimal format, while the version 6 uses the hexadecimal. So this is it. An IP address, each end device, a PC, a server, a printer, should have the IP address to communicate, and there is a composition of IP address. IP addressing composed of the address, the subnet mask, and the default gateway. This is optional, and it is only used if you have a hitch or a need to access remote networks. Subnet mask is there to identify in which network the IP falls. For example, in this section, when you see this subnet mask 255.255.255.0, it tells you that this is /20 class C private, and it has /24. There are 254 IP addresses. This one is so salient when it comes to subnetting. We'll talk about that later. So this is the scheme. You see, these are the decimal numbers. This is the subnet mask, and then this is the gateway. It's like a door that you use to enter outside or come in. So that is it. So let me show you how to configure this, because it is just a basic lab. I can demonstrate. You come to IP, then you set 192.168.1.10, then that is the address. You see, automatically it detects the correct or appropriate subnet mask. Then the default gateway is the first IP address, so that is it. When you hover on this laptop, it has the IP address, so that is it by what IP addressing overview is. So this is it. So IP version 4 addresses are displayed in dotted decimal, 4 decimal numbers ranging from 0 to 255. So this is in total, it is 256, separated by decimal points. So that is it. We've got interfaces and ports. So interfaces applies on the router. Ports applies on the switch. Sometimes it is called switch ports. So the surface of a router, it is called interface. Then those holes that you see on the switch, let me just use that deliberately. Such are the switch ports. So to remotely connect to and manage a layer 2 switch, you should configure the SVI. SVI, this is through the configuration of the default gateway. You configure, you create a VLAN, an interface VLAN there, then you assign that interface an IP address. So you will be using that IP address as a gateway. So each switch has a default VLAN 1, which is used as SVI. But for security purposes, as a network engineer, you should always move your management VLAN from VLAN 1 to any other VLAN, because you can create almost 496 VLANs on a switch. A layer 2 switch does not need an IP address to operate, but the SVI switch virtual interface is used to remotely manage the switch. I had explained this earlier. So about ports. So manual IP address configuration I have shown you in Cisco Packet Tracer just a moment ago. So there is no need to repeat their automatic IP address configuration. Let me also show you faster. Let me configure this. Enable config terminal IP DHCP pool, maybe LAN 1, then default you specify the gateway 192.168.20.1, then network 192.168.20.0/2. So that is it, DNS 888. So I'm done. So I have configured this router as a DHCP server. When I come on this section, so I did a static. This only applies if you've got small number of computers, but in a large scale network, you can use DHCP. So let me connect this. Connect this. So I can assign static IP to this 20.1. Once I do that, then the DHCP should work. You see, it has received IP address automatic without I configuring. So this is one way of IP addressing, but mostly it is used in large networks. So that is it. This is what they talk about here. Switch virtual interface, I have already talked about that. Packet tracer implementation of network connectivity, taking two switches, then you connect them. End-to-end connectivity, building a simple network, configuring switch management. So on this switch, let me explain here. I'm not going to do this because of time. There is no need of creating VLAN. Just go on this switch under global configuration mode, just type interface VLAN 1. Then you assign the IP address, or you assign that interface to that VLAN, then exit IP default gateway. You specify the IP that you will be using to access this switch. When you come to this, then telnetting will work. So sometimes you see a network administrator is reported to that the network somewhere in a department is down. He has no need to walk there to troubleshoot, but he has just asks the location. Where is that? Maybe finance. He logs in the switch that is providing LAN access to the finance. Then he troubleshoots the error. So thank you so much for following this particular course. Next, I'll be day 3. I'll be talking about another topic. Stay tuned. This is a course that is running for almost a month. In any case of if you've got a question, feel free to contact Netlabs Hub via comments or via contacts that are shared on the profile of the channel. Thank you.